Good morning. Are we all ready for a conference? Well, it's wonderful to see all of you. How many of you have been to a previous CIPD conference? Let's see some hands. So some newbies as well, so you're all incredibly welcome. I know we've got delegates from all over, from around the world. It's really a real thrill to see this hall full. We have a fantastic agenda for you, high-impact HR. I'm going to spend 10-15 minutes just giving you some thoughts on where we see the evolution and development of the profession. And I think so many exciting things happening. I remember my first conference speech 2 years ago, and I said there has never been a more important or more interesting time to be in HR. And I so profoundly believe that. I'm reminded of that every single day. But it's a great conference. I'm delighted that IBM is our main sponsor, so go visit them out in the exhibition hall, and all other exhibitors. They're here to help you understand some of the developments and innovations and everything from technology to well-being and all the other things in between. So do go and visit the exhibition as well. So, what's going on? How do we see the future of the profession? For those of you who were here last year, you may remember I briefly introduced this framework as we think of it. So we've been looking at lots of different aspects of what's going on in the workplace, what's going on in the economy, what is this shifting context that we live in? And you're certainly going to hear more of this from Rita later on. We have a changing nature of work, the changing nature of the workforce with diversity in so many different ways, and a changing nature of the workplace itself, where we work, what we even call work today. And these trends are vitally important for us as a profession to understand. So the first thing we look at the top of this framework is bringing insight and understanding about these contextual shifts. This is, to me, to us, our professional context. We need to understand these things because they are impacting every organization in the world today. And I think it was William Gibson, one of my favorite quotes, who said, you know, we may look at some of this stuff and imagine it's happening somewhere else. Well, it's happening everywhere and it's happening simultaneously. And William Gibson said, you know, the thing about the future is it's already here, but it's just not evenly distributed. And I think that's so true in a lot of what we're looking at in this contextual space. So that's the first big thing. The second big thing is over on your right there about the analytics. How do we bring better understanding of the real value drivers of business? And of course, today, most people understand, including our friends in the finance profession, that most of what we measure through traditional instruments of financial reporting are not capturing the value of enterprise. You know, pick a number, but typically people would say that 70% or more of enterprise value is now in the so-called intangible space. And a huge amount of that is about human capital. We also know as a profession we must get better at measurement. We've got to embrace this big data thing and analytics. We've got to have better definition of terms. We struggle even with some of the most basic things like, do we have a common definition and understanding of things like headcount? So we're doing a huge amount of work in that space to say, how do we help the profession to move this agenda forwards? Now is the time. And it's not just, as I said, for the HR profession. This is for business at large. It's for the investor community, all sorts of people now looking at organizations and saying, we haven't got good data on a lot of these things. And over on the right there is what we call in science, or the sciences of human behavior. There is so much new learning that's emerging around neuroscience and behavioral science and positive psychology, which always amuses me. We have to put positive in front of psychology, but that is the reality. How do we think about the positive drivers of behavior? How do we understand systems theory and social network analysis and all these sorts of things that are in this space, which really should be the deep underpinnings of what the profession is about? Because fundamentally at the heart of HR is understanding human behavior. What motivates us, how we learn, and all those other things. And, of course, how that works and plays out in terms of organizations and organizational behavior. And underpinning that, of course, is, well, you take all of those things, then what does that mean for HR itself? How do we truly move from what I think people still will too often regard as too much of a control function to a true enablement function, and recognize that so much of HR is actually done out in the line. It's the line managers that have to deal with all this diversity of people and diversity of talent and so forth. And we've got to enable them better. We've got to teach them, support them, coach them, encourage them. So that's a huge message for us as a profession as well. Truly empowering and enabling the organizations, working closely with business and all the different functions to build better businesses. And all of that work that we've been doing over the last year or so has continued to grow. And I'm very proud of our team and the work we do in this sort of space. We collaborate with a huge number of organizations on these things. But all the work we've been doing on megatrends, which is really calling out, as I said, these big shifts in the nature of work, these big shifts in the nature of the workforce, and these big shifts in the nature of the workplace, all set in a much more uncertain and volatile world. How we build more agile organizations and how we build cultures that are truly empowering and inclusive. So the work also includes all the things we're doing around the education to work gap, the huge gaps that exist, the skills gaps, and how we help young people into work and create meaningful working lives for them. So the Learning to Work campaigns, the mentoring programs, Steps Ahead Mentoring, which I think many of you as members are signing up to, and that's a hugely exciting program and something that we can not only give back to young people and to society, but it's hugely enriching for us as well when we get involved in these sorts of programs. And all the work we're doing on policy and the shift in labour markets and the recent stuff on EU migrant labour and how that's impacting the UK job markets. Because we know not only in the UK, but job markets everywhere, we have a huge challenge now in too many people who are overqualified for a lot of the jobs that we seem to be creating. And what we might see is a hollowing out of the mid-skills level. So we've got lots of low-skills jobs, a lot of high-skills jobs which we're having trouble filling. And we're not creating the career growth and the career opportunities for people to come out of low-wage environments. And that's a hugely central agenda for HR. It's about how do we design the right roles, the right jobs, the right organizations that make the best use of the talent that we have available to us. So that's a lot of the big contextual stuff. On the analytics stuff, as I said, working very closely with the finance profession, particularly with our strategic partnership with CIMA, the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, working with the UK Commission, working with CMI, working with the British Standards Institute, all sorts of organizations that we need to collaborate with as functions as well as professional bodies to help build a better framework of understanding real value and the kinds of measures that we all need to have. So a hugely important agenda with a lot of governmental support and others. And then on the science of human behavior, all this work around, so what does neuroscience really tell us about how we learn? And when we understand that, what do we do? How do we change the learning practices and processes so that people do learn better? And we now talk about the biggest impact or the biggest change in learning is about self-directed learning and using technology to embed learning in the processes and everything that we do. So lots of exciting things going on there, and the work we did over the year with Dan Pink and all this sort of stuff on engagement, which is so important. It's not just a business agenda, it's a political agenda. We've got David Cameron talking about national happiness and things of that nature, and we've got CEOs talking about, I need to make this place a happier place to work. And the kind of language that just did not exist 5 years ago. And that is really exciting stuff for us to connect to. And then, of course, on the HR and learning practices themselves, so yeah, building the kind of competences and capabilities we need within the profession. Looking at some core capabilities such as business partnering, which we're rolling out some new programs on. And this is all going to feed into, of course, how do we see the curriculum and capabilities that we need to develop for the future. And that comes into one other chart, I promise. No more charts after this. Is how we are trying to pull together all of this thinking. So if you think about what I've just described, that kind of what I fondly refer to as our four bubbles diagram, is the underlying knowledge base that we need to have as a profession. Understanding the contextual shifts, better understanding of data and analytics, better understanding of sciences, and all the kind of HR operational practices and leading edge thinking. That's our knowledge base. And from that, we are evolving what we call the profession for the future, which is so how do we embed that stuff into our learning and into our curriculum? And how do we think about that from the perspective of qualification and certification and progression and CPD and all those things, which are so vital to being a profession. And that's what we're revisiting through the Profession for the Future work. And you're going to hear a lot more about that over the next year or two. Human capital standards. There's a big international debate about, okay, we're now in this space where people see that human capital is this vital element of every organization. So why haven't we got more standards that help us understand what good practice really looks like? But of course, our view of this is it's not just about saying, here's a bunch of processes that you all need to do. We're looking at it very much from the perspective of principles. What are the good principles of organizational management, of leadership, of people management? And how do you build those sorts of ideas into principles and then put the onus on organizations to show how their processes, whatever process they may have, respond to those sorts of principles? And very exciting work that's going on in that space. I've already talked about the human capital metrics column and how important that is. And then the last two, professionalization, which I think is a vital agenda for us. I mean, some people challenge us still today. Is HR a profession or a discipline? You've probably read things like Ram Charan's article in HBR where he talked about, well, HR probably needs to continue to do the administrative stuff because all this big, complicated stuff about strategy and about human capital and organizations needs to be done by somebody else. Well, not on my watch, it doesn't. We need to build these kind of capabilities. We need to be in that space. And it is such a compelling and exciting space to be in. But it's about how do we continue to grow ourselves as a profession, with the respect of a profession, with bringing people in at the bottom end. So we're doing a huge amount to promote HR as a profession to young people. Go check out platforms like Plotter, and you'll see we're creating a whole HR world there. We're building HR apprenticeships. Because I'm sure, if I said to you and asked you tell me about your career in HR, we've got too many people who in HR say, they will start by describing their career this way: I ended up in HR because, right? And we can't build a profession from people who just said, I ended up in HR, right? And of course, it's also about accreditation and recognition. If I compare HR to finance, who would certainly see themselves as a profession, they are accredited, they are qualified, they do CPD, they do hold themselves to account on things like codes of practice. And in a world where people are moving around between organizations so much more, accreditation and recognition is so much more important. And even in the world of banking, all this debate about banking standards and changing banking cultures, one of the big elements is how do you professionalize more people in that world? Banking professional standards, the functional professional standards that support and underpin good organization. And that's what we mean by that column of professionalization. And then, of course, the final one is about internationalization. It's about how do we see these things, whether they be standards, whether they be the way we look at capabilities, the way we accredit people in a more international context. Because many of you work in international businesses. And we are seeing so much pull from around the world to say, connect, help, support, grow, from governments through HR institutes and everything else. And my absolute belief has always driven me throughout my professional career is we will do this stuff through collaboration. We will work with other institutes and other bodies. We will work with other thought leaders. We'll work with governments. We'll work with other HR institutes around the world who understand the context that they're in, and we will support and help grow. Because we are one of the biggest HR bodies in the world. We have an over 100-year history. We are incredibly proud of that fact, and I want us to be one of the world's leaders in helping to develop the profession and move it forward. So that's it. Simples, right? That's all we've got to do. But as I said at the beginning, there has never been a more important time for us. I want us to stand up as a profession. I want to be confident and proud of what we do, engaging with business at every level, encouraging more people into the profession, and recognizing that people can move in and out of the profession, which is a good thing in my view for every function in business today. And we've got to think about all these changes that are coming down the line or already with us and how we embrace them and make use of them. And fundamentally, at the top of this chart, therefore, is about how we build better work and working lives. And that's the purpose we've called out for the CIPD. We called it out 2 years ago. And that is the purpose that I believe resonates for the profession as well, because that's what we do. We build better organizations, better work, better working opportunities. We embrace and bring more people, diversity, inclusion, giving more people more opportunities for more productive working lives. And I can't think of a more profound purpose than that. And when we do those things right, then we are absolutely driving better business. And that's what's at the top. How do we impact business and drive greater value? So that's it. That's the kind of direction that we're setting, these big themes which we're trying to pull together, build the knowledge base, engage with lots of people, collaborate and share, and engage with you as a community on that journey as well, which is, of course, absolutely vital. So how we use social media and all these other things to get that outreach, get that connection, and co-create these things. It's not about us or me sitting in a dark room with a towel over my head dreaming this stuff up. We've got to work with you as a community and say, what are you seeing? What's most important to you? So particularly as we look at profession for the future, what are the skills and capabilities we most need? We need to be really out there and working with you all. Okay?